Hello YouTube, and welcome to the Body Honesty Project, Brain Honesty Edition. My name is Lydia, and today I'm going to give you a mental health update because it's been a few months since I came forward and started talking about my CPTSD and what it's like being raised by narcissistic parents. And I wanted to tell you all where I'm at now and what's going on that front. Now, I know that these videos get like 10% of the views of my regular fat acceptance views, so for those of you that did decide to click on this and watch it, you're going to get to know a more personal side of me. There will be no fat acceptance ridiculousness in this video, so if that's what you're here for, I will not be upset if you click off. So I guess the first update I'll give you is on the meds. Now, I started off taking an SSRI at a very, very, very low dose. I think it's like the entry level dose of 10 milligrams. And for a while, it was working really, really well. The anxiety in my stomach wasn't there. The noise in my head wasn't there. All the small things didn't send a flush through my body and into panic. Like forever, small things like my son saying that he forgot his lunchbox would get me flushed and sweaty and upset emotionally, even if logically and even if I could verbally say to my son, that's okay, it's not the end of the world. I would know that, but my body would always respond with a flush, a panic. I couldn't control it. But the meds seemed to help with all of those small things where whenever I logically knew that I didn't need to be upset, my physiological response was now matching that. So the meds for a while were working really, really well. But my doctor had told me that recovering from trauma involves both the meds and the therapy. The meds allow us to tap the brakes, but the therapy is where the problems really get solved. So I started trauma therapy. And I had therapy in the past. I had a normal therapist where we did discuss some of the traumas, but that was very different than trauma therapy, where we explicitly list out the traumas, dissect them, and try to heal from them. So in each session, we pick a trauma, we walk through it, I have to relive it, I have to experience it as if I'm 6 years old again, and then we freeze the scene, and then adult me comes into the scene, and I tell little me all the things that she needs to hear. Now, I have a very, very long list of traumas. My CPTSD is not a one incident that resulted in trauma. It was a reinforced pattern of behavior from bullies and my parents, and it really, really messed up my brain. My doctor explains it as emotional neglect. He says that my brain was not nurtured enough when I was young, that certain pathways did not form. Certain chemicals did not get released or absorbed, and thus I was put behind the 8 ball when it came to dealing with emotions. I never got the infrastructure that other people get naturally. Mine was never allowed to be built properly, so now, as a 44-year-old woman, I have to rebuild it myself. Now, the trauma therapy will work in the long run. We have to open up each one of these wounds in order to heal them. But in the short term, it's causing me a lot of distress. After the first 2 weeks of trauma therapy, I went back to my doctor and he upped my meds because the existing meds were okay with my day-to-day, but the trauma therapy was making me more anxious and more panicky that the meds were just no longer strong enough. So we increased the meds and things were functioning okay for me during the day. Because then I started to develop a series of panic attacks in my sleep. So every night, 5 or 6 times, I would wake up completely soaked. The subconscious of my brain was still dissecting the things that we discussed in trauma therapy, and this would result in panic attacks every night. And when I say panic attack, I mean I'm in fear and I profusely sweat, like a flash flood of sweating. And I completely soak the sheets. My strategy for a while was going to bed with a stack of dry sheets so that every single time it happened, I could get up and rotate and grab the new sheets. Recently, my husband bought new, more breathable sheets, and it does seem to help, but not entirely. The breathable sheets make it so that in between panic attacks, the sheets from the previous one have had enough time to dry, whereas otherwise I would have to just keep on adding more sheets. So I went back to the doctor and told him about what was happening, that the medication is making my daytime a little bit better, but I'm still sweating profusely at night. And as a result, even though I'm not as anxious during the day, the meds are working with that, and my head isn't noisy, I'm grumpy, I'm irritable, it's causing problems with my relationships, because how well can a person function when they get up 5 times per night? I was exhausted, I wasn't being productive at work, and I started to be increasingly more irritable. So my doctor prescribed me another drug, and this one is specifically for sleep. And you know what? It has been helping. It doesn't wipe out the panic attacks, but if I can get into a deeper sleep, I often have fewer of them. So instead of getting up 5 times per night, I might get up twice. But I'm also learning on the importance of the timing of the sleeping pill, because it kicks in anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes, and it hits me pretty hard. I also noticed that the effects stay in me a good 8 hours. So if I take the sleeping pill too late, early the next morning, I'm still feeling some of the effects. So it's imperative that I take it early enough in the night so that I do fall asleep and get a good night's rest, but also get up in the morning and feel clear-headed. So this has been a very long process. I meet with my trauma therapist every 2 weeks, and right now it feels like we dig up a trauma, I have panic attacks, I feel like crap for almost the entire 2 weeks before the next trauma therapy appointment, and I might have like 3 days where I'm feeling really, really good, and then we unpack the next trauma and it starts all over again. This has been very hard, but I also know that this is the way towards complete healing. I could just take the meds and not go to trauma therapy. I would feel okay, but I'm also not solving anything. My goal is to unpack each of these traumas, get my brain functioning correctly, and then I won't need the medication anymore. But at the same time, I have no shame in taking this medication. This medication makes my brain function like it should be. All it does is open up the receptors to serotonin. It's not giving me any fake serotonin, it's just opening up the receptors that got closed due to trauma. Now, with trauma therapy, I can naturally open up those receptors, but it's going to take a lot of time. It could take months or years to naturally open those receptors. So I have no shame in taking a pill right now, as I'm working towards opening them up naturally with therapy. And I guess this is why I also have the opinions that I do about fat acceptance. Like, I understand trauma. I understand that it does affect your brain. It does drive you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And even when you logically know that something is wrong, you don't have the right chemicals to stop you from doing it. I actually do get it. I know that when I'm overstressed and my chemicals are out of balance, it is really, really, really hard to not do whatever the maladaptive behavior is. If it's going onto a chat room, if it's drinking a bottle of vodka, if it's making an online bet, if it's eating a whole cake, I understand when that feeling happens. And a lot of people just white knuckle it. They white knuckle it and they just say, nope, just don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, just make that choice. And it works for some. But wouldn't it be better to not have to make that choice? Wouldn't it be better to solve the problems that are underneath that get you to that point? Now, I'm still about making the smart choice even when it's hard, but we serve ourselves so much better when we solve the problems that are underneath, because then the number of times that you have to make that choice are way down. People that suffer from eating disorders because of trauma, I believe them. I believe that shitty things happened in their past, they have a chemical imbalance, and food comforts them. I believe that there are things out of whack that are taking control of them. But what I don't agree with is just letting food be that coping mechanism. I have a long string of maladaptive behaviors that I have leaned on in the past. And my childhood traumas are not an excuse for me to indulge in them. They could be a reason as to why I did things before, but they're not an excuse to continue to do them. We all mess up. We all slip up from time to time. And if you struggle with food and you go out and have a binge one day, you don't need to beat yourself up. It happens. You're human. But there's no reason to continue to live that lifestyle once you know better. You make the mistake, you dust yourself off, and then you get right back at it. The same as any other addict. If an alcoholic goes and has a binge one day, it does not undo all the time that they spent sober. I really hate this whole notion of go back to day one. No, you're not going back to day one. All those other days still counted. Just like all the days that you spent without binging still count. If you slip up and have one binge, okay, ignore it, go back to what you were doing before. And go see your therapist and find out why it happened in the first place. Maybe you can set up your environment so that you're not led into that mental state that led to the binge in the first place. Mental health is incredibly important to me. And I know that sometimes in my videos I'll be jokey and laughing, but that's usually to prevent me from looking offended. I know that it can look sometimes like I don't care or I'm heartless and I just don't understand the issues that these people are going through. But the thing is, I really, really do. I have experienced so much discrimination in my life, and my brain was emotionally neglected. I get it. So that's why I don't think that we should give in. Life may not have dealt you a good hand, but you need to make the best you can with it. I still have a long road ahead of me in my trauma recovery. And I probably have many more nights filled with sweaty panic attacks ahead of me. But I'm approaching it head on. So until next time, stay brain positive, but also brain honest.